Janitors are pushing for higher pay from an innovative company near Fort Point Channel. The company is called WeWork, and it provides space for entrepreneurs developing startups. The janitors who take care of the space work for a contractor and say they make as little as $10 an hour. Supporting their campaign is the union Service Employees International. We'd like to welcome the Vice President of 32BJ SEIU, Roxana Rivera. Thank you very much for being with us, Roxana.
Thank you for having me.
So talk about how you found out about what was going on with these workers.
So some workers that previously had worked at the WeWork location came forth to us around issues about not getting all hours paid for their hours of work. So that's how we first initially got exposed to the working conditions of these workers. And then we started talking to more workers and found out that obviously that they were interested in organizing for better pay and working conditions. So yeah.
What about this kind of workspace? How does it compare with other kinds of office workspaces that janitors have to work on?
So WeWork really prides itself on creating space for freelancers and startups, and they have a motto of creating a space where folks can make a life, not just a living. And unfortunately, for the janitors that actually clean the space and contribute to the success of WeWork, they unfortunately are not making a living. They're making $10 an hour with nothing else. Whereas WeWork can be innovative in the sense of the startups and the folks that use the space, there's nothing innovative about poverty wages in creating a poverty wage job. So workers have come together and are saying that we're not invisible and we work here too. And what we really want and what workers are really trying to achieve is the same thing that janitors that work across Boston have, which is a dignified wage and access to health care and other benefits.
Now, and some people, especially if they've never done this kind of work, they might think of this as well. It's a low-skilled job, so you get low pay. What's wrong with that? But talk about what makes this job especially challenging.
So WeWork is a company that actually is valued by its own investors at a $10 billion company. So if we can't create livable wage jobs at this type of company, where can we? And the thing is that they pride themselves on creating a community, and they call everybody that uses their space, part of that community. Unfortunately, that doesn't extend to the contracted janitors there. They offer things like around-the-clock free beer and coffee, craft for those that use that space. So the janitors have to, they contribute in making that space accessible and for everybody that uses the space, and yet they live in poverty.
Talk about the work routines for janitors, and this is not just in one workplace, but people are juggling schedules, maybe multiple jobs.
Yeah, so folks definitely need to work more than one job to make ends meet, and workers, much like in a regular office space, they have to make sure everything's clean and ready for folks that need to use the space. But in addition, because they offer things like around-the-clock beer, that brings another situation for janitors where they have to deal with the kegs, they have to deal with all the cups, they have to deal with, what comes of a space that is around the clock, folks are drinking beer as they work.
Yeah, you don't have to clean up the beer in too many office spaces usually, but this is the innovation world we're talking about. What about benefits? Or are there benefits?
So they have no benefits. So they don't have, anything else but a straight $10 wage. And so again, we think that if WeWork prides itself on creating a space where people can make a life versus a living, we think that should include the janitors too.
I did see one news piece in the Boston Business Journal, and WeWork sounds as if maybe they might want to rethink this arrangement, and they're talking about creating some new jobs with higher pay, even above $15 an hour. So are you encouraged at all by that maybe?
So I think, again, workers have come together and said we're not invisible anymore, and that they work, they work there too. And I think that has raised the eyebrows of concern from folks that even use the space. So some of WeWork's own tenants have come out in support of the janitors. And so, we are totally in support of lifting the standards and making sure that janitors that work at WeWork earn the same as any other janitor that are working in other buildings across Boston.
Talk about how a better deal would make a difference for their families or their neighborhoods even.
So folks need to be able to raise their children. They need to be able to have time for their children. They need to be able to provide, and at this point, when you're making $10 an hour, you're just talking about just making ends meet with rent and food. And obviously that in turn improves the ability for them to live in safe communities and
afford to pay the rent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're basically talking about poverty jobs here, and so we just think that WeWork, given that it has clearly stated a mission of providing a community and creating a space where people can make a life versus not just a living, we believe that the janitors should be part of that too.
Well, janitors are part of a very big service economy in Boston, and I guess you're going to be highlighting that a couple of weeks from now, maybe, well, at least a little less than 3 weeks on Labor Day. So what have you got planned? Yeah,
so we are going to be doing a march and rally on Labor Day, as we should, as a union with a lot of community partners, to raise the issue of low-wage workers. So as you've heard this year, a lot of activity amongst fast food workers that similar making $10 an hour as WeWork workers, airport workers that work for that are contracted out by major airlines are making $10 an hour at Boston Logan Airport. So we want to use that day of Labor Day to highlight the issue of folks are working for these global and entrepreneurial companies, yet are living in poverty, and that's something that should change.
All right, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Roxana Rivera from 32BJ SEIU. Still to come, a new exhibit on the Old West End, the Foundation for Urban Renewal, cast in Washington. But first, this message.